The intellectual, the scientist, and the spiritualist are not candidates for the truth. They live on the opposite side of the tracks, on the other side of the wall. They live in a cinder-block house whose windows are sealed shut, closed off from any possibility of truth. The scientist has created many things in this world, many things that are beneficial to humans, in biology, medicine, engineering, and the like. It would not be unfair for him to state that a bridge that spans the San Francisco Bay is a version of truth. Mathematics and engineering have indeed created great marvels of human ingenuity. But the truths about the things that trouble the human within the scientist, the human within the intellectual, the human within the spiritualist, is something they can never come to know. The scientist believes that if it cannot be produced in a laboratory, it cannot be true. The scientist believes that if it cannot be understood by way of a theory, it cannot be true. The scientist believes that if it is not published in a peer-reviewed journal, it cannot be true. Shall it first be said that the scientist reacts against the spiritualist? His actions stem from his strict aversion to the spiritualist's notion of faith. Thus, he insists upon scientific verification. This is both reasonable and sound, for faith is a pie-in-the-sky concept. If a man functions according to faith, then anything goes. He can have faith that one day elephants will fly, and that holy water will flow out of kitchen faucets. But in reacting against the spiritualist, the scientist fails to see his own blind spot. In believing that a laboratory is the gold standard for identifying truth, he operates under the assumption that the laboratory possesses the requisite tools to detect it. In believing that his analysis is necessary to verify truth, he operates under the assumption that he has the eyes to recognize truth if it appears before him. In such ways, the scientist subscribes to the very same faith that he blames the spiritualist for. The only difference being that the spiritualist has faith in a spirit or God, while the scientist has faith in the laboratory and in his own capacity. Both of them operate under the shadow of assumption. The intellectual loves academia. The intellectual loves books, concepts, and principles. The intellectual loves mental models, data points, scoozy-soozies, and goozy-goozies. The more academic, scientific, verbose, complex, statistical, and cerebral it sounds, the more head over heels the intellectual will be. Because to the intellectual, anything and everything is about the cocktail party. To the intellectual, anything and everything is about the stage at SXSW. At the heart of the intellectual is the desire to be known as smart, and a thought leader, and intelligent. The intellectual does not have the capacity to abandon his mental models, and his scoozy-soozies, and goozy-goozies. He simply can't. Because by doing so, he would be stripped naked. He would have nothing to hide behind. He would abandon his image of the smart man, and this is something he simply cannot allow. Truth is, therefore, not a possibility for him. The spiritualist loves the fanciful and the dreamy. He loves the chants, the incense, the meditation, the mindfulness. He is enamored by the mention of love and oneness and loving kindness. He enjoys attending retreats which provide their own set of clothing and preach silence and lotus positions. The spiritualist loves the idea of a guru. He loves being gurued. In fact, he enjoys saying the words, "my guru." The spiritualist likes to belong to a guru, belong to a sect, belong to an ism, belong to a faction, or an order. Without a group of some sort, the spiritualist begins to suffocate. Truth is not possible for the scientist, the intellectual, or the spiritualist, for none of them are interested in truth. The scientist will allow for truth so long as it grows in the laboratory. The intellectual will allow for truth so long as it can be made into a principle, or mental model, or into a pomp and flair title that he can use at cocktail parties. The spiritualist will allow for truth so long as it can be had through his mindfulness routines, and so long as he doesn't have to abandon his guru or his incense. If it cannot be practiced, the intellectual and the spiritualist have no use for it. If it cannot be petri dished, the scientist has no use for it. Truth does not abide by man's conditions. Man has nothing but conditions. The scientist, the intellectual, and the spiritualist function according to an ulterior motive. The scientist does not want truth. He wants science. The intellectual does not want truth. He wants intellectualism. The spiritualist does not want truth. He wants spirituality. Truth does not want any of them. Truth seeks no man.